any of the islands in Casco Bay and is serviced the most frequently by the Casco Bay ferry lines, that public ferry service. And so they have a car ferry that goes out here most regularly called the Mashagon. During the year, there's about 12 trips daily from the Casco Bay lines. That's mostly to support the 800 year-round residents that live out here. And then in the summertime, sometimes the Casco Bay lines goes up to about 17 or 18 trips in a single day, all day long, bringing people out to enjoy Reggae Sunday or whatever else is going on during the summertime. Peaks Island's known for having about one of everything. They've got one branch of the post office, one branch of the public library. For a long time they had one police officer. That changed in the last decade to two, I believe. For a long time they had just one market, and that was this market off to our right, the gray building with the American and Irish flag flying out front. That is Hannigan's Market. And they know darn well that they are the only market on the island. They have a slogan on the back of the store that says, if we don't have it, you don't need it. It's about an $8 round-trip ferry ride to get out to Peaks Island. It is a cool place to check out if you have an afternoon to go enjoy. It's home to Guinness World Book record holder. She has known for having the most umbrella covers of anyone in the country, over 700 of them. Not the umbrellas, just the covers. And she has a little quirky museum out there on Peaks Island. It's also just a nice place to take a bike ride around. You can rent bikes on the island, or you can rent them in the old port and then carry them out with you on the Casco Bay ferry lines. The affluent to come out of the city and enjoy the sea breeze of Maine and live a rustic lifestyle that they call rustication at the time. And so what he did to help facilitate this was he built a hotel called the Ottawa House. And for a number of years, that hotel was quite successful, had lots of people come out and enjoy the sea breeze of Maine out on the seacoast here. The Ottawa House was operational up and running up until 1888, at which point a fire burned it down. And while Cushing made every effort he could to rebuild the Ottawa House, it lasted for another 20 years before it re-burned down, unfortunately, in 1973. So, with that, rustication pretty much ended on Cushing's Island, and effectively all tourism or public access ended as well. And I just wanted to note that there was a gazebo that we saw at the far end of the island. There are still a couple of those gazebos left from the time that the Ottawa House was here and had a park that went along with it. So nowadays, it's just those gazebos that remain from its prime as a public access island. Today, it's actually a private island, and only the lucky handful of families and friends that had been coming out here and bought up properties after the Ottawa House burned down were able to keep building houses out here. So there's a handful of lots, but they're all private. So the whole island actually is a private community. There was one relatively famous resident who bought this summer cottage off to our right, this brown building with a green roof and the chimney on top. This is the Hayes House. Mr. Charles M. Hayes was the owner of the Grand Trunk Railroad, and being the owner of a railroad, that made him quite a wealthy man. He was one of the fifth wealthiest in the country at the time. And also, as part of being a railroad owner, he would go to international conferences all about railroads, and was at one such conference in 1912 in England. thought himself very fortunate to have booked passage back to the United States on the brand new transatlantic steamship, the maiden voyage with passengers of the RMS Titanic. Now, unfortunately, Mr. Hayes did not survive the wreck. He was last seen helping women and children board lifeboats, two of whom were his wife and pregnant daughter, who did survive the wreck, and they came back out here to Cushing Island, and today 96 direct descendants of Charles M. Hayes continue to share this property out here. Over up to our right on Cushing Island, there's a little red house there. That is the one house of the one year-round resident that does live out on Cushing Island. All the rest of the houses are only occupied between May and October. That's because it's mostly a second home residence location. But the red house is the home of the caretaker that takes care of all those properties out there all throughout the cold winters that we have in Maine. Question about Cushing's, how do they get out there? It is not connected to the mainland, and they actually contract with the St. Croix, which is their own boat that services the islands, typically between May and October for the most part. Utilities are all turned off in the winter time come end of October. It just doesn't make sense to keep utilities running when no one's really living out there. To our left is House Island, and now we can see the east bastion of Fort Scammell. The east bastion was designed to defend against intruders coming in through the body of water up to our right. This is called Whitehead Passage. And back during the War of 1812, there was one British ship that did try to come in through Whitehead Passage up to our right. It did not know that we were so well fortified here in Maine, and it took one look at Fort Scammell, didn't realize that we had a fort, it wasn't on their maps, was a little surprised, and fired one cannonball shot in aggression, and missed. Fort Scammell returned fire, one cannonball shot back at the British ship, and missed, and the British ship hightailed it the heck out of here, and that was the War of 1812 in Maine. One thing you might have noticed up to our left are these teepee or yurt-like structures, tent-like structures on the fort. These are not part of the original fort. They are part of a company called Fortland, F-O-R-T-L-A-N-D, and they actually host glamorous camping experiences out here. So if you've ever daydreamed about camping on a fort, this might be your golden opportunity. History. Between 1907 and 1937, House Island was called the Ellis Islands of the North, and that is because we processed 1.2 million immigrants through this island and brought them into Portland. And over to our left, that blue building over there, that was right where the quarantine station was located. On the top of the island, there was the head surgeon's quarters, and at the far end of the island was where the detention center was. You did not want to end up there. That was where you had to process your paperwork, and if any of that got hung up, it could be kind of tricky. Over here, named for General Seth Williams, who's a Civil War hero. And you can actually still see in the greenery on the cliffs over to the right, the remains of an old gunner's nest. It's a flat-topped building that you'll get a little bit of a look at as we round the bend here. And this Fort Williams was retired in 1962, at which point the town of Cape Elizabeth bought the land and turned it into a public park. And you can actually see that there are quite a few people out visiting today. It's open from dawn until dusk. It's got parking, and sometimes they have food trucks out there. And it has one of the most famous residents of all of the state of Maine, which is that beautiful lighthouse coming up off to the right and the front of our boat. That is Portland Head Lighthouse. This is the very first American lighthouse, and I say that quite intentionally, because pre-Revolutionary War, there were lighthouses up and down the East Coast, but none of them were built by American money. They were British lighthouses. This was the very first lighthouse built with American dollars. And I'm going to interrupt myself just briefly here, because as we approach Portland Head Light, we are encountering a bit more swell. We are getting closer to the open Atlantic, so hold on if you're moving about the boat to something secure, such as a railing or a stanchion. Just not your neighbor. So Portland Head Light was first commissioned by George Washington himself in 1786. And being a new country, we were strapped for cash at that point, so we had to get a bit creative with how to construct this lighthouse. Alexander Hamilton, the Treasury of the Secretary, allotted just $1,500, and we had to make that expansive and be able to construct something as big as we could and get pretty resourceful. And once again, I'll just interrupt myself. Do please hold on to the boat, something secure, especially those of you down below deck. Make sure you're holding on to something secure as well, just for the next probably 2 minutes or so. We are encountering a bit higher swell, a little road wave here and there. Thank you, Captain Cam, for getting us so close to Portland Head Light. So when Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton allotted the $1,500 for this construction, that wasn't going to go that far. By today's standard, that's about $30,000. So we got creative up here in the Northeast, and local farmers were asked to bring field stones down to Portland Head. And then expert masons were hired to craft them all together. And you can still see that the lower 2/3 of the lighthouse has got that rough texture, and that's the original 1790s fieldstone. Above that, there's a collar and then a smoother part of the white base. That smoother part is brick. The lighthouse changed height a couple of times over the centuries. And then at the very top, the lantern gallery was first illuminated on January 10th, 1791, with 16 whale oil candles. Today, the lighthouse is now automated and electrified, and it actually flashes once every 4 seconds. At this angle, we can just make out the flashing of the light, but it can be seen up to 18 miles out to sea on a clear day, and it's actually more distinctively seen from further away. You can also see that there's a house attached to this lighthouse. That was where the lighthouse keeper lived. And it was such a nice big house that the lighthouse keeper could actually raise a whole family out there. There was one family, the Strout family, that did just that. And they actually maintained this light for over 50 years. They raised 9 children in the lighthouse, and then it passed down from one generation to the next. Now we can see Portland Headlight off to our left. And I want to just note that you can see a lot of people down there checking it out. The lighthouse very much is still operational, so nobody goes to the top of it. However, the lighthouse keeper's house is nowadays a museum, so it is a place to go visit if you want to learn more about some of the other lighthouse keepers that lived out there, and more of the construction history and all that good stuff about Portland Light. This lighthouse stands atop a very dangerous ledge. Back in the 1800s, 4 ships ran aground right over there on Ram Island Ledge during the same storm. Not a good look. But it wasn't until 1904 when the SS Californian, you might remember that name as the last ship that signaled with the Titanic before she sank. The SS Californian also ran aground right on Ram Island Ledge. Thankfully, no life was lost, but the ship did get stuck out there for 6 weeks, and Portland was trying to promote itself as a place to do business with by sea, and that was not a very good look. So we finally got that ship off of Ram Island Ledge, and the very next year, 1905, they set up this majestic granite tower at 96 feet high. One thing you'll notice if you look at it closely is it's got a sort of gradation of color from dark to light, and that's not a paint job. That is actually because in the wintertime we get huge waves out here. Sometimes 50-60-foot waves will smash against the seaward side of that lighthouse, effectively pressure washing it clean. So as you might imagine, it was a pretty difficult place to be a lighthouse keeper. You have maybe 2 up to 3 lighthouse keepers stationed out there at any given time. They had to be brought out by boat and dropped off. They were stuck with only a kerosene lamp for heat out there and for cooking. And to make matters worse, their outhouse was located at the very end of that long spindly pier. To top it all off, lighthouse keeper logs say that when those waves would smash at the granite, it was made to ring like a bell on the inside of the lighthouse. This was one of the very early ones to become automated, unsurprisingly. They ran an underwater cable all the way under the water here over to Portland Headlight, and that way the whoever stationed at Portland Headlight could control Ram Island Ledge right from the mainland safely. farming tradition out here. In the summertime, farmers would bring their livestock out to the islands to graze on the abundant vegetation that was available. The islands are also a predator-free place. There are no wolves or bears that were going to attack your livestock. And it was also a natural enclosure because you had the ocean that would keep your livestock all corralled in. So for many years, these islands served as places where you would graze hogs, pigs. Some of them, Ram Island, that ledge that we saw earlier, Ram Island had sheep or rams. And then we have a couple others all throughout the bay that have the name of the livestock that once grazed out here. Of course, pigs were grazing out on Hog Island. And then once that colonial farming tradition began to subside, this island was bought by a company called the Maine Island Realty Company, and they wanted to make it a destination for wealthy Portlanders to build summer homes. And so with a name like Little Hog Island, they didn't think their target clientele were going to be too enticed to buy property out here, so they petitioned the city of Portland to change its name. Something a little classier, Little Diamond Island. And they were successful. Over off to our left, you can see the Little Diamond Casino, that brown building with the red roof and the yellow trim on the windows. It's not a casino in the modern sense with blackjack and slot machines, but at the time the Maine Realty Company built this, they wanted it to be an entertainment venue and a place to bring people out and wine and dine them. And then what they did is they offered wealthy Portlanders a free boat ride to come out and check out the islands, have a good time at the Little Diamond Casino. But then they would not let them leave until they showed them every single last plot of land available for sale. That worked like a charm, and in about 30 days, every plot of land was sold. To our left, this brown building with a gray roof on the pier, that once was the old Coast Guard station. However, nowadays it is a private residence. The owners bought her as mostly a summer residence. Sometimes we see them out here and they'll open up those white doors and you can see what's been a beautifully redecorated interior with loads of natural light. Also off to the left, behind the pier of the old Coast Guard station, you can see these rectangular stacks of lobster pot traps. Just want to point them out just so you have a sense of what they look like. About 4 feet long, 2 feet wide, 2 feet high. And these lobster traps over to the left are belonging to the owner of that lobster boat to our left with the orange buoys hanging. So we like to call lobster boats the pickup trucks of the sea because they have that sort of flat bed on the back. That's where they keep all of their traps while they're baiting them and getting them ready to go out on the sea floor and wait for lobster. To our left, in the water, these tall wooden pilings are the remains of 3 intentionally wrecked boats. The McCoy 1 was one of the early Casco Bay Line's ferries. And when she was ready to retire, they thought it was more cost effective to just sink her right here instead of paying for labor to take her apart. The other 2 boats are called the Atlas and the Ajax, and at low tide you can see the ribs of the old boats. We're at pretty low tide right now, as evidenced by the sandbar off to our left. That connects Little Diamond Island to Great Diamond Island. And this sandbar is pretty neat. You can actually walk across it. You can see some people out there right now about to take that walk. And only at low tide because it gets completely covered at high tide with water. Over off to our left, this big white farmhouse on Great Diamond Island was the original farmhouse when this was Great Hog Island. And And it was said that when the wind was just wrong, you could smell the scent of the pig farm all the way on Commercial Street in Portland. As a Portlander myself, I am grateful it is no longer a pig farm. This white building with the greenish roof and the chimney on top, that's on Peaks Island. It is called the Trefethen Evergreen Improvement Association. And it was first built by a couple young men from Boston. They were businessmen who wanted to build a beautiful dance hall. And it was first built in the very early 1900s. And it was said to have the greatest Maplewood dance floor north of Boston. However, at the time it was built, it didn't see a whole lot of dancing because all the eligible bachelors had just gone off to World War I. So it did stick around and did see more dancing over the decades, but today it's more used as a potluck place where people on Peaks Island come together and have gatherings. Over off to our right is a bonus lighthouse. This little 4-foot 10-inch tall tower majestically marks Echo Point, which is indeed a navigational point. However, you might notice by her smallness, she is more of a lawn ornament, She's not a recognized Coast Guard lighthouse, but the owners do light her up at nighttime, and it looks like her cap is off today, so maybe they're replacing the bulb. I like to think that she's saved a few stray kayakers in the fog. Heads up, for those of you moving about the cabin or the boat, we might catch a little bit of weight from the boat that just passed on our right, so just make sure you're holding onto a railing or a stanchion, just something secure. And same reminder for the boat that just passed us on our left. Hold on to something nice and secure to the boat.
Baby, look at the yellow one. Look at how fast it's going.
Two would die. Hurry!
a little bit of boat wake. Again, if you're just moving about the cabin, make sure you're holding on to a railing or a stanchion, just something nice and secure down to the boat as we catch a bit of swell here. Perpendicular to the wake, so that helps break it up and create a little less swell for us. Over off to our right, this cute little island at the very end of Peaks Island is what we call Pumpkin Knob. It gets its name because it's said that in the fall, sometimes the foliage turns bright colors, so it looks a little bit like a pumpkin bobbing up and down in the water.